Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening, everyone, for this week's episode of Movie Nights with Matt. And this is it began as a bit of an experiment and it went well. So we're going to continue this on. I was talking to some of the folks over at Badlands, and John gave me the okay. And so we're, as everyone knows, doing this every Monday at 6 p.m., 6 to around 7:30. We're basically going to stream different films from the repository of films that Cynthia, myself, and our array of collaborators have been able to put together over the recent few years. And it's a pretty big production studio, and so we wanted to share this with all of the patriots out there in the United States. And this week, we're going to do a little bit of a dive into a very special movie that I think set the stage of a new orbital trajectory for many of the films that came afterwards. We did this about 2 years ago, but I'm not going to be presenting this film alone. And I'm not going to be just having an interactive discussion with those here listening to the live stream alone. This week I have special guest, Cynthia Chung. Hey, Cynthia.
Hey, glad to be on.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So we're going to play a movie based upon an amazing essay that you put together some years back on the origins of America's secret police. Are you excited?
Very.
Yeah. No, it was really a fun thing to read, and the way you compose this, I think, is going to fuel some good discussions. The film that we put together is based sort of on three sections, where you start from the ancient past, the ancient roots of secret societies and the nature of occult intelligence operations. You have a second section going through some incredibly weird but very important stuff to understand in the 19th century and the creation of the FBI. And then you have a third section going through some forces in the 20th century who worked very hard to try to shut down this occult bureau called the FBI. Didn't work out, but still the fight was valiant. And so I think you did a great job with these three components of this unified thing. It's about 30 minutes. Do you have any opening thoughts that you want people to think about before we go into any of this?
No, I think we should just go into it and then have a discussion afterwards.
I think it's a good idea. Okay, but before we do, we're going to do a word from today's sponsor. Let's do two sponsors. So we'll do two sponsors. The first one is going to be My Pillow. So let's hear what folks over at My Pillow have to say.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Made in America sale ever. We just put huge discounts on products made right here in the USA. My Pillow bed pillows, body pillows, go anywhere pillows, bolster pillows, all made with my patented adjustable fill. Mattresses, mattress toppers, mattress pads, adjustable bed frames, mattress foundations, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. And now we're expanding our USA products beyond just quality sleep. Like the cross I wear every day, now available in both men's and women's. We even have USA-made socks. And are you tired of being tired? Try our new health beverage, Rev 7. Or how about my coffee, the greatest coffee ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get deep discounts on all these products. Plus, for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Right. Get in coffee now. That's interesting. I didn't expect that from a mattress and sleeping specialist, but that's cool. That's a fun contradiction. So we got I love it. And then we got Tamarack Gardens. So here we go, Tamarack. Oh, I'm supposed to read that. Okay, I'll catch this. Are you looking for a better alternative to the over-the-counter drugstore medications? Tamarack Garden began from a parent's desperate need for safe and effective options for their kids. Tired of toxic chemicals taking matters into their own hands, they began crafting medicine from weeds, wildflowers, and herbs, the original time-tested healers that modern medicine cannot match. Packed with antiviral herbs to boost immunity and fight illness, Tamarack Garden has, for a limited time, their elderberry and rosehip syrup kit available. Not only is it delicious, no more battles with kids, and easy to make, it will keep you and your family healthy for all fall and winter. Introducing Tamarack Garden's new baby line. Clean, non-toxic, and gentle for newborns and moms. Relieving cradle cap, diaper rash, stretch marks, and postpartum pain. Visit tamarackgarden.com today and use promo code Badlands for $10 off orders over $50. Remember to eat your weeds. tamarackgarden.com, promo code Badlands. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the film, and I want people as well. We're going to try to keep our eyes on the chat as well, and I'll try to take note of any interesting questions, insights that people might have along the way. So feel free to pull out your questions for Cynthia or myself, which we'll engage with at the very end of the show. So without further ado, the origins of America's secret police.
It has become increasingly clear in the minds of many citizens that a degree of influence over the structures of elected governments is pushing our society towards determined goals that have little to do with the well-being of the majority of citizens or national governments of this earth. This power above nation-states did not emerge overnight. Any attempt to understand history while ignoring the active role of secret societies would result in a dismal failure. Sadly, due to the scant evidence which such secret organizations leave to posterity, such investigations are often messy and riddled with confusion and misinformation. Those attempting to make sense of the conspiracy shaping history, for good or for evil, often conclude falsely that secret societies are either all-powerful, endowed by their initiates with secret knowledge knowable only to the inner elites, or that such societies could not possibly exist due to the fact that human beings are too stupid to keep secrets or maintain a conspiracy stretching across multiple generations. We will soon see why both assumptions are wrong by evaluating the nature of secret societies and the growth of intelligence operations as instruments of social control stretching far back into the days of ancient Greece and upward to our current age. Many are aware of the inscription at the cult of Apollo at Delphi, which oversaw a network of broad intelligence operations, banking, and perception management on behalf of an elite network of initiates, priests, and ruling families. This quote has been treated as words of wisdom, which is why kings, emperors, statesmen, and generals from all quarters of the ancient world would travel to the temple with a very generous payment in gold in hopes that the wisdom of the great god Apollo would be bestowed on them and give strength and power to their particular cause. One of the most famous prophecies made by the cult of Delphi, according to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, was to King Croesus of Lydia. King Croesus was a very rich king and the last bastion of the Ionian cities against the increasing Persian power in Anatolia. King Croesus wished to know whether he should continue his military campaign deeper into Persian Empire territory alone, or whether he should seek a military alliance in such a feat. According to Herodotus, the amount of gold King Croesus delivered was the greatest ever bestowed upon the temple of Apollo. In return, the priestess of Delphi, otherwise known as the Oracle, would spout nonsensical babble, intoxicated by the gas vapors of the chasm over which she was conveniently placed. The priests would then translate the oracle's prophecy into an ambiguous message from the gods. The king was told, if Croesus goes to war, he will destroy a great empire. Croesus was also told to ally himself with the most powerful Greek state, and he chose Sparta. Croesus was overjoyed and thought his victory guaranteed, and immediately began working towards building his military campaign against Persia. In the end, Croesus lost everything, and Lydia was taken over by the Persians. The Spartans never showed up. The empire Croesus destroyed was his own. The words inscribed at the Temple of Apollo, "Know thyself, nothing to excess, surety brings ruin," served as a forewarning to anyone who dared to seek the assistance of the priests in the pursuit of wisdom and power. We are told that those who were worthy of the god Apollo would have the wisdom to solve the riddle of their prophecy and would prevail in their endeavors. Those unworthy of Apollo's good graces would fail and be ruined. It is a nice story, but in reality, just a brilliant cover for a global intelligence racket. The cult of Delphi was indeed the nerve center of military and political intelligence that had no allegiance to any state or empire, but rather was able to use intelligence that they collected with their networks of spies, along with the intelligence they were given by those foolish enough to lay out their plans and their goals to them. The priests of Delphi would then decide thereupon what information needed to be shared with what target to fit what purpose. This power to shape wars, alliances, and cultural policy was vast, and the kings, generals, and city-states that followed their counsel became little more than pawns on a grand chessboard. The true question for those who dared to visit the cult of Delphi wasn't really about whether or not they had the wisdom needed to solve the oracle's prophecies, but rather, what kind of pawn would they be to the priests of Apollo? The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry was formally organized in the United States in 1801 as a group of Tory partisans who had found themselves on the losing side of the American Revolution. One of the principal men involved from the very beginning was a British general by the name of Augustine Prevost. Prevost had conquered Charleston, South Carolina, and set up a secret police apparatus there which became the Scottish Rite headquarters after the British Army had left. The Scottish Rite would come to rule over American Freemasonry during the 19th century and exert undue influence on federal law enforcement, which continues to this day. J. Edgar Hoover, who oversaw the growth of the shadow government inside the USA during the course of 8 presidencies, was himself a 33rd degree Mason of the Scottish Rite. Coronated in 1955 after 35 years of devout membership. To understand the role played on the grand chessboard by J. Edgar Hoover and the Scottish Rite, we would not get far without appreciating the role of a man named Albert Pike. In 1859, Albert Pike, general of the Confederate armies during the Civil War, was elected Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite's southern jurisdiction. In 1871, Morals and Dogma of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the Anti-Bible of the Rite, was first published by Pike. If one is to understand what constitutes the morals and dogma of such a membership, to which Hoover entered the innermost circle, it will become clear that not only does the Rite act as an opposing church to Christianity, but that pledging one's allegiance to the secret society is understood as coming before all else in the material world, including government and country. Writing about top-down organization, Pike wrote the following in his book, Morals and Dogma. The blue or lower degrees are but for the outer court of the temple. part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Masonry. These are the very same techniques used by the cult of Delphi, with the understanding that the true explication of the symbols will only be understood by those supposedly worthy of them, that is, the adepts, who are the princes of Masonry. How does one know if one is a prince of Masonry? Those who are foolish enough to have complete faith in the magic of the occult will give an honest attempt to understand such symbols. However, the truth of the matter is that those who are moved closer to the inner sanctum are merely chosen for their usefulness as instruments of a higher will. While this person might be a pawn who plays the determining role in a checkmate, they remain nevertheless just a pawn within a great game they never controlled or even understood. Pike would also write in his Morals and Dogma, "Men are but the automata of Providence, and Providence uses the demagogue, the fanatic, and the knave as its tools and instruments to effect that which they do not dream, and which they imagine themselves commissioned to prevent." Here it becomes clear that the majority of mankind is considered by the right as an instrument of providence, and that to do the will of such providence justifies that the right treat mankind as such. We will see shortly what sort of providence they are speaking of. Perhaps most alarming are Pike's views of God and what is to be considered good. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the higher degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians, whose deeds prove his cruelty, perfidy, and hatred of man, barbarism and repulsion to science, would Adonai and his priests calumniate him? Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately, Adonai is also God. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black. For the absolute can only exist as two gods. The true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, the god of light and god of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the god of darkness and evil. In later years, the body of Albert Pike would be interred inside the Washington, D.C. Temple's walls. A few feet away from his body is a complete replication of the office and desk of their second most honored member, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. It should also be known that much of the FBI is implicated in the Scottish Rite. For instance, there are certain Washington lodges which have a disproportionately high number of FBI agents in them, such as the Alexandria Lodge. On December 17, 1906, Teddy Roosevelt promoted his Navy Secretary, Charles J. Bonaparte, to the position of Attorney General of the United States. Bonaparte lost no time in telling Congress that the Department of Justice must be given a force of permanent police under its control. On May 27, 1908, Congress pushed back against Bonaparte's demands by prohibiting all executive departments from using Secret Service agents as policemen, including the Justice Department. During this period, only the Treasury Department had the authority to use Secret Service men. To get around this block from Congress, on July 26, 1908, Attorney General Bonaparte, on Teddy Roosevelt's instructions, ordered the creation of an investigative agency within the Department of Justice, which later became known as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It was the start of what would become an unelected shadow government in the heart of the USA, in direct opposition to the rule of self-government. In the midst of this slow takeover of the government, a 22-year-old J. Edgar Hoover was first recruited to play a special role within a great game. The year was 1917. Just out of law school, Hoover was put in charge of the Department of Justice's War Emergency Division's Enemy Alien Bureau and was quickly immersed in the wildly lawless wartime counterinsurgency of the First Red Scare from 1917 till 1920. Anton Chaikin writes of this period in his paper Hoover's FBI and Anglo-American Dictatorship.
Attorney General Palmer created a General Intelligence or Radical Division in the Bureau of Investigation and appointed Hoover its head. Military intelligence and Hoover's agents, working together as a single secret service, now built up a network of civilian vigilante spies, informers, and provocateurs. These auxiliaries were then set loose in the Palmer Raids, a war on unions, radicals, civil rights advocates, teachers, and immigrants, from November 1919 to January 1920. This initial descent into a police state was, however, deeply opposed by the American population and sparked popular protests and outrage.
J. Edgar Hoover was well fitted as Palmer's deputy in overseeing the political mass arrests, deportations, lynchings, terror propaganda, and witch hunts. Hoover would put a Southern white Masonic unit inside the Bureau itself, called the Fidelity Chapter, and insist that his agents refer to the Bureau and his office as the seat of government. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, J. Edgar Hoover blamed the general lawlessness on inefficient, corrupt local politicians and police. What was the solution? More power to the Bureau. While campaigning for the presidency, Franklin Roosevelt installed his close friend, Montana Senator Thomas J. Walsh, as the 1932 Democratic Convention chairman. In 1921, Walsh had led the battle at the Senate hearings on the Justice Department's legal practices. During the hearings, he confronted Palmer and his deputy Hoover with evidence that they had perpetrated an orgy of terror, violence, and crime against the citizens of the USA. Walsh remained in the Senate as J. Edgar Hoover's dedicated enemy. Franklin Roosevelt won the election on November 8, 1932, and was to take office in March 1933. On February 15, 1933, a low-level Italian Freemason named Giuseppe Zangara shot at President-elect Roosevelt. He missed, and ended up killing the Chicago mayor Anton Cermak instead. Weeks after this failed assassination attempt, Franklin Roosevelt publicly announced that he would appoint Senator Thomas J. Walsh as U.S. Attorney General. On March 1st, the New York Times reported Walsh's pledge that he would reorganize the Department of Justice when he assumes office, probably with an almost completely new personnel. It is said that Walsh had declared that one of his first acts would be to oust J. Edgar Hoover. Walsh was found dead the next morning while on a train to Washington, D.C. for Roosevelt's March 4th inauguration and his own swearing in. Starting in July 1933, a group of American Legion officials paid by J.P. Morgan's men asked Marine Corps General Smedley Butler to lead a coup d'etat against President Roosevelt. When General Butler had gathered enough evidence of the plot, he went to J. Edgar Hoover for action. Hoover refused to do anything, stating that there was no evidence a federal criminal statute had been violated. Finding no luck with the FBI, General Butler changed gears and went to the Special Committee on Un-American Activities, known as the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, which began an investigation on November 20th, 1934. Within a month, the committee corroborated all of Butler's claims. But they took no action, since Franklin Roosevelt wished to use these findings as leverage against the Wall Street financiers who had formerly been working against his New Deal reforms tooth and nail. In order to bring the message to the American people, Butler arranged to have his testimonial outlining the coup plot recorded and broadcast across the nation by Universal Studios on December 28, 1935. Franklin Roosevelt died on April 12, 1945, and World War II ended 5 months later. The OSS would be dissolved 3 weeks after the end of the war. The CIA was officially created 2 years later, now purged of its FDR patriots. Following this, the FBI continued to impose a dictatorship on the population domestically, while the new CIA became the instrument selected to advance an Anglo-American empire internationally. Throughout his short-lived presidency, John F. Kennedy worked valiantly to revive Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal within the context of the 1960s. He launched great megaprojects, denounced the Malthusian outlook, fought to end the Cold War, and pulled U.S. troops out of Vietnam. Kennedy additionally fired CIA Chief Allen Dulles, who had led that organization for 8 years, with the young president threatening to break the renegade agency into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy was brutally murdered in the streets of Dallas, Texas, in broad daylight. On November 29, 1963, the Warren Commission, under the control of Allen Dulles, was set up to investigate the murder of President Kennedy. The old Congressman Hale Boggs of Louisiana, an ally of Franklin Roosevelt, was a member of that Warren Commission. Boggs became increasingly disturbed by the lack of transparency and rigor exhibited by the commission and became convinced that many of the documents used to incriminate Oswald were in fact forgeries. In 1965, Representative Boggs told New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison that Oswald could not have been the one who killed Kennedy. It was Boggs who encouraged Garrison to begin the only trial of the president's murder to this day. After the murder of John F. Kennedy's brother, Robert, who was running for the presidency in 1968 and would surely have won, Nixon was inaugurated on January 20th, 1969. Hale Boggs soon after called on Nixon's Attorney General John Mitchell to have the courage to fire J. Edgar Hoover. It wasn't long thereafter that the private airplane carrying Hale Boggs disappeared without a trace. Jim Garrison was the district attorney of New Orleans from 1962 to 1973, and was the only person to bring forth a trial concerning the assassination of President Kennedy. In Jim Garrison's book, On the Trail of the Assassins, published in 1991, J. Edgar Hoover comes up several times, impeding or shutting down investigations into JFK's murder. In particular, concerning the evidence collected by the Dallas Police Department, such as the nitrate test Oswald was given, and which in fact exonerated him, proving that he had never fired a rifle shot on the day of November 22, 1963. However, for reasons only known to the government and its investigators, this fact was kept secret for 10 months. It was finally revealed in the Warren Commission report, which inexplicably didn't change their opinion that Oswald had shot Kennedy. Today, there are those who continue to discredit the work of Jim Garrison for the crime of challenging the absurd narrative of the Warren Commission. However, anyone who bothers to read the Warren Commission report would soon discover it to be a mess of contradictions, fallacies, and outright fabrications. Not only an absurd sham, but ultimately complicit in one of the most disgraceful cover-ups in American history. When will the American people realize that the biggest threat to American freedom is not from without, but from within its very own walls, where it has been prominently residing for the last 112 years? The question remains, what allowed the growth of this parasitical occultism within the USA since the earliest days of the Republic over 200 years ago? Was the success of this Masonic force caused by the supposed secret knowledge of its initiates? Or was it due to the naivete of the population and the embrace of insanity by an oligarchical class? The fact is that over the course of 2,500 years, since the days of Croesus's downfall, occult secret societies continue to use the same elementary techniques of deception to achieve their geopolitical aims. Although the outward form has changed over the millennia, the essential character of these Masonic orders has not changed. With priesthoods controlling the rites and rituals, carefully designed to make soft-minded fools more soft-minded and more foolish as they increasingly lose their own identities in the pursuit of the ever-fleeting promise of secret knowledge. Whether the initiate is named Albert Pike, J. Edgar Hoover, or a King Croesus of Lydia, the result is the same. The nations which these superstitious figures thought they were saving were ultimately the very thing which their blind faith in the occult ended up destroying from within. The remedy to such decay has always been located in the break from the trance of mysticism and the worshipping of symbolism which such occult societies demand in both their initiates and victims alike. In the days of ancient Greece, this remedy was identified in the form of a philosopher king. A Solon, a Thales, or a Plato, whose love of humanity and God was matched only by the concern for the health of their own immortal souls. Such was the nature of the fountain upon which they drew for their wisdom, courage, and creativity in the course of lives devoted to something much more than simple power or secret knowledge. In our modern age, this force for good has taken the form of statesmen with names like Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., and John F. Kennedy, who all gave their lives for the cause of humanity and God's law. These were men who overcame the fear of their own mortality and rose to a higher domain of identity that saw their purpose in the extinguishing of lies, injustice, and the uplifting of all humanity to a better way.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah, apparently muted mics don't receive or communicate sound very well. It's new discovery. Yeah, no, that was fun, but unfortunate choppiness, eh?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way to get around it. We're just not very tech savvy, so we have to ask someone.
Yeah, well, I'll get to the bottom of this. So everybody listening, I put a link to the original film that they could watch with no visual choppiness on YouTube. It's also up on Rumble.
Well, on your Canadian Patriot YouTube channel.
On Canadian Patriot YouTube channel, which is also going to be put down. I think I'll do that ASAP into the comments section as soon as we're finished streaming for today. But overall, yeah, that gets me. Every time I watch that film, I get a little choked up.
Oh, well, especially when Kennedy starts talking, it really affects me because it's just so sad.
Yeah,
it was taken away from what America could have been. It was a totally different route, and then on top of it, the fact that his brother was most certainly going to also be president. So they had for sure like a solid 16 years of influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the tragedy of it all, right? That's what makes it really, really hit home. Isn't just that this man in his prime was cut down, but that there was this momentum and set of principles with concrete policies, which I know that there's one person in the live stream, Golden Tulip, who was taking some offense to our lionization of Kennedy. But the fact is, when you actually look at his policies, yeah, there's one per. Yeah, so but that's her right. That's her right. You know, there's a lot of The Dark Side of Camelot is a book I have by Seymour Hersh that he wrote to get, early on. I think that was his first book. That's a book that's very popular that makes the case that Kennedy was actually a member of the dark forces, a member of evil and corruption. So, you can't blame people for reading that. But what would you say somebody like Golden Tulip or anybody reading that original hit
Well,
piece on Kennedy.
Poet of Tomorrow seems to be actually more active in the chat room.
Who? What?
Poet
Sorry, can
of
you repeat that?
Tomorrow. Poet
What-
of Tomorrow seems
Oh, who?
also.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, Golden Tulip is saying that she's that the Kennedys made their money on illicitness, booze running around and among other things, and that he was not interested in ending the Vietnam War. I've heard that from a lot of places, so I'm glad that she's actually saying this. What's your response to the idea that he was not interested in ending the Vietnam War or any of the other things, and that he was corrupt? So what would you say about that?
Well, I think that I would like to ask those people first what they think is a good role model for the United States, because there are people who have become so extreme that they don't think that there are any positive role models for what the United States as a republic had represented. And of course, I'm not denying that it was an imperfect thing, and I think it's not very fair to expect that it should be perfect. But I think that there was something that was unique when the United States was formed as a republic in terms of an opposition to empire, very explicitly against the British Empire, which was the most powerful empire and had a huge global presence and, you could say power grab. I mean, even the south of the United States, the whole cotton plantation situation was directly being fueled for the British Empire type of economics, along with India. So there was a clear attempt to challenge that. I think that what came out of it, which is called the American system, and you have Matthew Carey, who's the father of Henry Carey, who was the lead economic advisor of Lincoln. You have Henry Clay. These types of people started to come out along with Alexander Hamilton in terms of a machine tool industry approach to economics, which was really, from my perspective, the central thrust against a system that was justifying slavery and cheap labor. And free trade was also incorporated into that. So I think that there is something that is being attacked of the American legacy from that standpoint, that a lot of people who actually did good works in this process are being attacked as never being honest, or the whole Alexander Hamilton Broadway show, for instance. Like it's even acknowledged. I watched half of it. I still have to finish it, but it's being acknowledged that Aaron Burr was not like a great guy, but oddly still twists things around such that you are, having this weird kind of relationship with Hamilton, where you're more interested in his personal affairs, which are all circumspect, rather than what he actually did in terms of works, in terms of an economic policy for the United States, which led to the Centennial Exhibition, where 100 years from the founding of the United States, America was leading in industry and sciences. And they had invited, I think it was over 20 million people, I believe, or no, I think it was 10 million people. Sorry. 10 million people came through for this exhibit, and there was something like 27 countries that were involved.
Yeah.
It was made very clear that the kinds of innovations that the United States was making, which is these kinds of things were a direct opposition to serfdom, feudalism, slavery. They wanted to share with other countries. So the idea was very much even though it's called the American system, because it originated within the United States, although there are French, also dirigism and Colbertism is an influence. It came out of the United States, but it was always meant to be shared with other countries like Germany under Friedrich List. That was what made Germany an economic powerhouse, was through Friedrich List adopting Hamilton economic applications, which Friedrich List names Hamilton directly as the reason why he was able to do that. And I think that a lot of this is being attacked right now. There's a lot of historical revisionism to try to take that away from us. So I think that there is also an element of this in attacking people like Kennedy, and people are more intrigued as to like what is the dirty laundry of Kennedy, rather than looking at the actual foreign policy and domestic policy that Kennedy was applying, which obviously is much more important rather than whether or not he was cheating on Jackie. So these kinds of things are, unfortunately, it's like tabloid trash that, and also the connection with the mafia. I've done actually a lot of work on this in my book, The Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set. And the mafia works for Gladio. So people need to realize that this whole narrative that Kennedy was like murdered by the mafia because he screwed them over or whatever, he had like dirty dealings with them. The mafia works for Gladio. They're also directly implicated with the CIA with the heroin trade. All of the, after World War II, it was the mafia that was brought back into Italy. So like to challenge the Mussolini, because you have the gang counter gang, type of operations. To challenge Mussolini, the CIA directly brought in the mafia. Like it's considered mainstream knowledge that this actually occurred, and people can actually look at the interview I did with Matt and Gordon on this that was on the Vatican and the drug trade around the Vatican's implications in this, which also brings in the mafia, because the Vatican is also implicated in Gladio. So this, instead of repeating like tabloid stuff that we're listening to, if you look into how the structure of Gladio works, you can very quickly start to see that it doesn't make sense what they're saying. And they've trash talked like Martin Luther King as well. They're like pretty much everyone that has stood as a force, they're guaranteed to be trash talked. And so I think that we have to kind of look past this. Also, I'll end with my rant here, but the show The Crown on Netflix, they also like did a hit piece on Kennedy, and they portrayed him as like some kind of heroin addict, and that he beat Jackie, and they were calling him like, oh, he's calling for a world revolution, like he was some kind of communist. And so we're supposed to sympathize with the British monarchy over Kennedy, and that Kwame Nkrumah actually, liked the Queen Elizabeth more than Kennedy because they danced together when Kennedy was clearly working very closely with Kwame Nkrumah. And during the Warren Commission, when Kwame Nkrumah asked for a copy of the Warren Commission report on Kennedy's assassination, he said, oh, all I have to see is that Alan Dulles was on the board. Enough said.
I remember you showed me that episode of The Crown, and I my jaw dropped as well. I mean, the disgusting propaganda to try to paint this image that Kwame Nkrumah loved, like adored Queen Elizabeth, and that JFK was a wife beating. Like I think they have him actually like abusing Jackie Kennedy while he's also doing drugs at the same time. Like it's such vitriolic hate and poison.
They made up a scene that Jackie meets with Elizabeth for tea, right, and confesses all of these things to Elizabeth.
No, that's the danger, I guess, in our current society, which has really gotten sucked into 2-3 generations of increasing consumerism, that the line between fantasy and fiction has become increasingly blurred by tabloids, by soap operas, by all of the reality TV as well, which again is not reality in any way. Everything you're seeing on reality TV has always been scripted, including just lost your video is a little bit choppy, so should be fine, but just so you know. But it's blurred people's ability to differentiate what is fact, what is fiction. So they're able to put out more and more of these revisionist takes on this very important history. Like there's, as a side note, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer is another one where I think young people in their early 20s watching Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer probably think that, that there's some fact that this is not purely fiction, or that Lincoln was just a fictional character. Whatever the case, the idea of the real Lincoln is completely gone. Or Hamilton, they're used to watching Hamilton, the super famous as a stage play around the world and all this stuff, and everybody loves the stage play, but the actual battle that Hamilton was waging with these occult secret societies around Aaron Burr that were being brought in, and which killed him and his son, and then undid all of these protectionist and national economic measures that he fought and died for, like the National Bank and all of the protective tariffs and everything else, and the internal improvements that he also mandated as an economic scientific genius. All of that was undone by the enemy operation of Tammany Hall that created Wall Street as a branch of the city of London in America. He understood that, and he fought against that. And this touches on what you were saying earlier, how Henry C. Carey, the advisor to Lincoln, was self-aware of this policy, as was Friedrich List and others, who were bringing this policy into Germany, into Russia, into Japan, everywhere around the world, where, like you said, 10 million? Who knows this, right? How important is this? But nobody knows this, that 10 million delegates from around the world came to Philadelphia to celebrate America's centennial and explore how America was able to industrialize, how it was able to apply this national system of dirigism, which FDR later revived through his New Deal, which JFK was reviving for the short time he was alive, which his brother in his program for the presidency towards a newer world in 1968 documents how he's going to revive this same program. They were all doing it. And the fact that that's been written out of our history books, and every single one of these important martyred characters, including Martin Luther King Jr., is caricaturized, carved out of this continuity of history. Right, that's what gets me, is that the oligarchy has this way of like creating this gossipy tabloid drama around a particular individual devoid of the context. They make up and spin information, they infuse into the drama to make it sexy, like lifestyles of the rich and famous, scandalous life, like what does Prince Philip do in the bedroom, right? Like this type of crap you get in gossipy British tabloids that they brought into America. And then they can just like take down, they can like do character assassinations of already murdered individuals who fought against this empire, so that nobody understands what the fight is actually about. And I think your script, your film, your essay, and your book, which, by the way, as you were talking, I put a link to buy your Black Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set in the chat box. So everybody go look for that comment where people can buy Cynthia's Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set. It's an essential read. But if somebody else wrote a question about Colonel Fletcher Prouty, I had put out during the streaming of the video, I said people should try to read Colonel Fletcher Prouty. Can you say anything about Fletcher Prouty and the importance of what he did and he wrote and his position? Like, who was he and what did he do and say to document what JFK was trying to do about the CIA or about the Vietnam War?
I think I need to log out and come back on, because it's choppy on my side as well.
Oh.
And then I'll answer the question, because I don't know what's going on with my internet.
Okay.
It should be fine, right?
I hope so. Try it out. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, here. Can everybody, I'm gonna do a little test for those listening right now on the live stream. Can I be heard okay? Or was it Cynthia, or was it me who's choppy right now? So I'll allow people a chance here in the chat to respond to that question. Anybody, just provide you're fine, Matt, says Sherry Seagull. Okay. All right, we can hear you, says Cam Cooksey. Hey, Cam. Hey, Sherry. All right, Cynthia, was it Cynthia? Was she coming through okay? Okay, Cynthia kept freezing. Got you. Okay. And Cynthia, oh, okay. Cynthia, can you hear me? I'll be right back, guys. 1 second. All right, one second. Don't go away. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Cynthia, are you turning the back on? You can't connect to the site. You want to come down to my computer? Okay. All right. So luckily, I have a second chair in my office, and we're going to use that second chair. Hello. Now the only thing here, I can't get my speakers to showcase sound, but I don't think we need sound because you and I are just together right now, right? So we don't need these things. All right. So Cynthia and I share the same house, just to dispel any assumptions that we might be in different houses. Hey, baby, how are you doing?
Right.
I think this is the first time we've ever been on camera together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like in the same
same room. Yeah. Yes. That's interesting. Eh? All right. So I think we've resolved the problem pretty well here. But I was just asking about Colonel Fletcher Prouty because some people had asked about him a little bit more. Some didn't know about who Colonel Prouty was. Can you say a little bit about who was he and why is it important to study what he has to say about JFK's intentions to get out of Vietnam or anything else?
Well, he was first of all, he was part of the Air Force, which is not a plus, but he was involved with flying out, you can say refugees during World War II. And he was a young pilot during this time. He was in his 20s, and he was remarking that a lot of the POWs, right? It was the POWs that he was supposed to be flying out, that they were hiding a lot of Nazis within these POWs. And he doesn't go over details as to like how he suspected it, but there was a lot of, he noticed there were certain, because Alan Dulles is what he largely blames for, but he basically makes the case. And, Talbot, too, in The Devil's Chessboard has also done a very well-known book that goes through a lot of detail about Alan Dulles basically being a double agent. And he was beholden to British intelligence, which was actually more friendly than people realized to the whole Hitler-Mussolini construct. And Stephen Durrell is another good author for people. He wrote Oswald Mosley's Black Shirts. That goes through the British story. Stephen Durrell's a well-respected researcher, and he did another one too on MI6 Gladio type operations. I can't remember exactly the title of the book, but it has MI6 in the title.
Mm.
And I didn't get a chance to read that one yet, but I did read fully the Oswald Mosley Black Shirt book, which I also heavily relied upon for what I did as work for the British intelligence component in my book, which ultimately there's an ample amount of evidence to showcase that there was friendliness towards Mussolini and Hitler. And you have like the Prime Minister Lloyd, who is also very publicly supportive of Hitler. He called Hitler a form of a George Washington. Like, I think a lot of people don't know about this. Lloyd is also the one responsible for the Mandate of Palestine.
That's Lloyd George.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was the one who basically created what was going to lead up to the creation of Israel. And he's a fascist Nazi, like he's a supporter of Hitler, and he's the guy who spearheaded this Mandate of Palestine, which allowed for the eventual creation of Israel. So that's another paradox that I go through in my book in terms of how it was actually, if you look at who signed the Balfour Declaration, they were all actually pretty anti-Semitic. And then there was a Rothschild on it. But the Rothschild's also actually, ironically, anti-Semitic. And Oswald Mosley goes through how, there's two different types of Jews. And he actually got one of the Rothschilds out of Austria during the Nazi occupation. So there's that kind of anomaly where it's not so black and white as people think. And the way that they sometimes characterize Hitler being opposed to these kinds of things, you have to realize that he was actually funded by the bankers at the end of the day. And Oswald Mosley was friends with the Sassoons, and he was friends with the Rothschilds. Like,
right, and the Sassoons are like a major, nominally Jewish banking dynasty that was assigned to control much of Asia, the opium trade, and other things, right? And they're still very powerful today, or influential, but they're often, because they're the fact that they're a dominant Jewish banking family, older than the Rothschilds as a dynasty. It's a rich irony that Oswald Mosley, the head of the British Union of Fascists, the Nazi of England, was a very close friend with the Sassoons as well as with the Rothschilds.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have like Edward the Eighth, that is like very clearly pro Hitler. That's why he, they say that he had to be removed because he married an American socialite. That's obviously not the real reason. And then you have the Prime Minister, Lloyd George, as well, who's pro this. Churchill's also tied into this directly. So the original question was, though, about the Prouty.
Yeah.
So Prouty, he's important because he actually worked as a liaison between the Pentagon and the CIA. So he actually worked directly under Lyman Lemnitzer, which he has a soft spot for, but I have huge problems with, because it was Lyman Lemnitzer who proposed Operation Northwood, which was the false flag to actually, it was a proposed terrorist act on American civilians and even American military, to blame it on Castro. And people can look it up on Wikipedia. It's a very mainstream acknowledged thing, and Kennedy rejected it, and he effectively fired Lemnitzer by not renewing his contract, which was coming up like that year. And Lemnitzer was hired by NATO as their chief right away, like within like weeks. I think 1 or 2 weeks, as the head of NATO, which was going to be basically the head of Gladio, which is NATO's secret armies, which is paramilitary activities that are done under the guise of terrorist acts to nudge the population in certain directions, which is typically far right directions. And one world government, centralized control type directions. So Prouty was directly in the middle of it, and during the whole thing leading up to Kennedy's assassination, he was sent on a contract to Australia. So he was actually head of special operations, like within the United States, you can say. I forgot the official term for it, but he would have been the head of security for Kennedy, and he was sent to Australia during that point. So, and he also was in the know for the Vietnamese. He was an insider. So, people can read his work. It's available for free on archive.org. But his secret team was published first, and I believe it was 1976 or 73, so even more controversial. So like really in the thick of the Vietnam War, and he was exposing how the U.S. military is being taken over by basically a CIA operation.
That's the Special Forces, the Green Beret operation, or something more even bigger than that?
Yeah, no, he was going over how, the Bay of Pigs was a setup for Kennedy, and Kennedy did the Cuban study group. But Maxwell Taylor was a person who was installed into this that Kennedy thought was strictly military, but it turns out that Maxwell Taylor was in cahoots with Allen Dulles, and there was this agreement to have a complete reform of what the military was going to be, which was the introduction to counterinsurgency tactics, like clandestine paramilitary warfare. Which obviously, that is not a good thing if you respect democratic processes, right? Because there's no oversight in that sort of thing. It's controlled by very small selective groupings, and there's no way to kind of oversee what the heck is going on. And so the Green Berets were revived under this program with Allen Dulles, Maxwell Taylor, and Edward Lansdale, who was in charge of the Saigon mission in Vietnam. And, it was a creation. The U.S. Green Berets were a creation originally during World War II as part of NATO's secret armies. That's where all of this originates from, is World War II. But they were based off of the SAS British unit. So the Berets are a tipping of the hat directly to this British unit. And this British SAS, where they were involved with the Khmer Rouge, like training the Khmer Rouge. They were also involved in training Irish terrorists in Ireland. Like the background to them is quite bad, but it's often the case that Americans or Canadians that were not familiar with the history of this kind of history of the British role in things. So the Green Berets were put into sleeper mode during Eisenhower's term because Eisenhower is a military man. He was not perfect by any means, but he at least was pushing back on a lot of these bigger kinds of reforms. And because he was a military man, it was harder for things to go underneath, like be swept under the rug without him knowing. Whereas when Kennedy came in, he was totally not a military or intelligence person, right? He kind of like was causing a lot of tension between these departments right from the get-go, which I think was a strategic mistake because you need to have a channel of communication, obviously, with the military and the intelligence. Although, at that point, Allen Dulles was the head of intelligence. So there are a lot of these things started to be installed behind the scenes with Kennedy's administration. And the Green Berets were basically created as subservient to the CIA. They were never military, because military and CIA is supposed to be completely separate.
Right. Somebody was just saying in the comment section, I noticed this too. I lost the person who wrote this, but they made a point that, and by the way, for everybody listening, if you're wondering why your comment or whatever is not being read, it's because I suck at this. I'm really bad at following all of the comments that are going on while paying attention to Cynthia. But that being said, I know somebody did write a message saying that, the Ritz, that Colonel Towner Watkins really doesn't like either Prouty or Lemnitzer. And I know you and I were also talking about certain suspicions that we had that there might be an aspect of limited hangout with Prouty. As much as useful as his content is, like we verified it from a number of sources, but there is something shady that we should just put out there too.
And he worked as a financier afterwards.
Yeah, and he also kind of ran cover for Lemnitzer in his own recounting of that event, right? Or of the events of that age. He's sort of acting like Lemnitzer shouldn't be held accountable, even though we know that Lemnitzer was definitely a high-level point man for the murder of JFK and Operation Gladio, like as far as his role in NATO and running NATO. So we should have like a little conversation with Colonel and just share some notes, I think, Colonel Towner Watkins, and share some notes about
what he specifically has a problem with in terms of credit. Because also, I mean, Colonel Towner Watkins has also said that she's liked my book, by the way. And she's done like a book review of my book that is favorable. So I would like to have that dialogue because
I'll say one thing that got me when I was like reading through originally the introduction that Prouty wrote in the CIA, JFK, and Vietnam. The thing that I found to be a little, because he's very useful in helping Jim Garrison, I think, right? He was the deep throat assisting Jim Garrison with his attack on Clay Shaw and the conspiracy. But what he seems to do is a bit of a Delphic sleight of hand, and I don't know to what degree he's self-aware, is that he directs people to study the thinking of Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller's assessment of how to think about oligarchical families and structures, which when you look at Buckminster Fuller as an agent of Esalen, like this guy was a high-level Esalen operative who's putting out a false model on how to think about what is the oligarchy, what do they want. I could see how Prouty might be a limited hangout. Now that doesn't mean that everything he says is wrong.
Right. Well, that's the thing. We have to kind of clarify what is the limited hangout, because obviously at that point that's like there are truths being said and there are untruths being said. So I would be interested in having that conversation with Colonel Towner Watkins in terms of, because she obviously doesn't disagree with my overall thesis because she's been very supportive and favorable.
She's not criticizing you.
No, I'm not receiving it that way. Okay. I'm just saying I would like to know, because I myself also have those reserves from Prouty. But this is the thing, I don't do hero worshiping. So there could also just be like legitimate, genuine blind spots, right? Like not everything has to be someone playing a Delphic game, although he is, a higher level player. But from the work, because I'm not just relying on what he's saying, I like to use him because he was an insider. So it shows that it's not just like a bunch of outsiders that are criticizing, some essential problems. And from that standpoint, to show that it's like criticism isn't coming from an anti-military, like U.S. military standpoint, but the fact that there were certain decisions that were made as to what was going to guide U.S. military training and what was going to be the mandate and what were going to be the type of missions that they were sent on, which is never supposed to be clandestine. Originally, that was the supposed to be the mandate. And how did it become what it became? So there is a very clear role that Alan Dulles plays in this, that Edward Lansdale plays in this, and Lemonitzer. And so that's the thing. Prouty is favorable to him. I'm not. So it's not like, you can't form your hypotheses still by looking at enough information and seeing the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. There has been nothing to showcase to me that isn't the case, that there was an Alan Dulles, Lyman Lemonitzer, Edward Lansdale, huge, massive role in the Green Beret Special Forces being reformed, revamped, Vietnam War being the real big first experiment in this new form of warfare. Because when you look at it, like Vietnam War is sort of like World War I, right? Like everyone's like, why did World War I really happen? Like,
Yeah.
And like we're like, oh, someone argued about how their chicken was cooked during lunch or something. Like it's such a trivial. It's like, oh, there was this argument over something, and then this guy was shot that nobody knows the name of, but then that ended up, all the countries started piling in and choosing sides on it. Like it's really
not satisfying the reason. That's not the reason why a war would actually happen. The accepted narrative is bunk.
And so the Vietnam War is also sort of like a similar story when you think about it. And it is true that there was never a military objective that was declared. I mean, that's a big deal, that there was not a military objective that was declared when they went into the war.
Stop communism. Stop the commies. What's this? That's an objective.
It was like,
take the hill, keep the hill.
It was not even as clear as that. And again, like, what does that mean by stop the commies? Because like you're in Vietnam specifically, right? Like Vietnam isn't the headquarters of the commies. So there was already that weirdness in the mandate, and there were a lot of things that were like tried out. And Operation Phoenix, I don't think anyone, I would like to think no one wants to defend what Operation Phoenix was, which was basically a human laboratory social experiment on people, which I'm realizing now was like a lot of what MK Ultra kind of like went away. We're told like clearly the experiments they were doing during MK Ultra kind of did a phase shift and they became something else. And Operation Phoenix was sort of a laboratory for these sorts of things of like, wiping the mind clean. The MK Ultra was interested in introducing a different personality into a person. You wipe the memory and you introduce something else. And Tavistock Institute is the first one to use the term Operation Phoenix from a more military objective. Tavistock was directly linked with British military. So they were directly linked. Right. They were not, their mandate originally was more clinical and therapeutic, but then after World War I, or at a certain point, I can't remember the exact date, they made a direct link with the British military. And then they come up with this term Operation Phoenix, which is later on used in Vietnam, no coincidence. And it's the first massive social experiment to wipe the slate clean, but on a societal level.
Well, it's very much on the alchemical Rosicrucian solvate coagula idea, right? Of disassemble and recombine. So the idea of the shock therapy that all of these World War I soldiers went through, they could clearly see that they had common characteristics where through the trauma that they suffered from, their minds had really like compartmentalized, disassembled, and there was more of a tendency towards malleability, suggestibility, and reassembling personalities with compartmentalized memories. And then I guess the forces running British intelligence were like, we can use this. We shouldn't be using Tavistock to treat these people. We should be using it as a way to develop better techniques of doing this even in peacetime if need be, which is where it then becomes this new instrument of psychological warfare on whole populations of the world. Right?
Because after World War I, you had a lot of people who started to show PTSD. That was not like, because World War I was also a different form of warfare. There was like chemical warfare that was being used for the first time, and it was just a different way of doing warfare. That there was forms of PTSD that just you didn't see before, and unfortunately they were experimenting on those soldiers. So that was something that Tavistock was being brought into, and there's an Orwell component to this as well, actually. So
like
George Orwell. So George Orwell, you have O'Brien, who's the tormentor. He's part of like the higher echelons of the party, and he's the one who ultimately commits the electroshock therapy onto Winston, and they're trying to basically reboot Winston so that he is back online and functional within the propaganda system. And it was Martin Seif's daughter who came up with the insight on this, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And then when you know more about Orwell's life, which I'll say in a moment, it makes perfect sense that O'Brien and Winston are Orwell. And they are the two conflicting identities of Orwell, because Orwell served as a policeman in Burma or Malay, I can't remember which one, but it was a country in Asia where the British Empire was heavily influenced in, and he was specifically a policeman, but was engaging in electroshock therapy type torture on dissidents in this area. And it has also been noted that where Orwell was working as a British colony was one of the blueprints for Operation Phoenix. They're directly connected. But I do believe that Orwell genuinely was like traumatized and haunted by what he had done. And so he has this write-up of 1984 because ultimately he felt powerless to resist such a system that I think he was entrapped in for his entire life. And he always worked for British intelligence. His whole life, I am sympathetic to him, and I think that he was not happy.
That insight though, that he was like perfect case of the abuser, or the abuser who becomes and the abused. He was both, and then it does awaken a sense of sympathy for a psych case like that, who had to himself carry out the sorts of torture on political dissidents when he was an officer for the British Empire in, I think it is Burma, I think.
I think it's Burma. Yeah. And there's a picture, I have it actually in my Panama paper on my Substack, True Gloss Berkeley. There's a picture of him with I think it's the Burmese police. But
it's kind of like a cry for help then. When you see him compose, it's such a great insight. When you see him compose in his story, the figure of Winston, and then also O'Brien being kind of the Mustafa Mond controller of that sector of Oceania. And then Winston, who's like this dissident, part of the establishment, but he's like a lower civil servant, and he kind of breaks free, starts wanting to think for himself, starts getting disgusted by the evils of 1984's structure of controls, but then confronts O'Brien, and you start seeing that it really does seem in my mind with this insight that it's kind of a cry for help. It's kind of like Orwell screaming in his subconscious, begging for like some way to break out of this trap, but he's not creative enough.
Well, apparently Aldous Huxley, so according to where I read, which I cannot validate exactly if this happened or not, but according what I read, that Timothy Leary apparently wrote in a book that when he visited Aldous Huxley on his deathbed, so like Aldous Huxley, had like a few days where he was taking actually a lot of LSD as he was dying because he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And Timothy Leary allegedly quotes, because I haven't read it directly from his book, that Aldous Huxley had said that the big brother was Churchill.
Yeah, that would make sense. And it's kind of interesting that then Orwell would also name the interlocutor Winston as also Churchill, like Winston having the name that gives it an extra layer of irony as well. Now, somebody's asking Tylerica, how did the music groups fit into Tavistock? Now, that's a conversation unto itself that I want us to have. However, I don't think with the time we have available to us today, since we have to end out the show at 7:30, that we can necessarily do it.
Yeah, just try to
tonight.
do 5 minutes of it.
How did Tavistock influence the music groups? Well, what I can say is this: David Gosselin.
Grateful Dead.
Hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay. David Gosselin.
Direct tie of Tavistock to Grateful Dead.
Yes. Oh, direct tie.
Yeah, because I believe it was the son of one of the Tavistock members. Now I'm not good with names. Was their like producer manager type person, their agent.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we could compile stuff. We'll have a show on this. I think we should have a whole show on this, frankly.
You and Gordon can do.
I'm thinking Dave Gosselin, who helped us make our recent documentary. And by the way, shout out to Jason Dahl for the current film that people just watched, American Secret Police. That is a filmmaking genius that we've been working with now for 3 years. He's made most of our films. And hats off to Jason Dahl for that work. David Gosselin has made a different style of documentary that for us that we just released. For those who haven't watched it, go to our Substacks and look for Edgar Allan Poe's Final Mystery. It'll I hope knock your socks off. It's a fantastic composition that David put together using some elements from my book, and that's available. But David also did a previous documentary that maybe we could play in one of our movie nights as well, on The Devil at Woodstock. That's it. It's called The Devil at Woodstock. I mean, if people want to watch it right now, Google Devil at Woodstock, David Gosselin. You'll probably find it. And it's a very well done piece that could accompany a nice conversation about British and Anglo-American military controls over the entirety of the counterculture itself, and especially the music sector, which brings in Charles Manson, Scientology, some other weird stuff that will also surprise you maybe. I don't remember if he gets it Tavistock per se, but yeah, maybe the three of us can be on one of these things to show his movie and have a conversation about counterculture. It'd be fun, eh? So okay, we have 5 minutes left. I want to just say a little shout out to a couple of people who did some donations to our work. Now, part of what we're doing here is these documentaries that we've been making, they're entirely supported by our audience. We are not we totally rely on donations. So part of it is we're hoping to inspire people to kick in donations towards us that go towards making more movies. These are unfortunately a little bit expensive to produce. So Team Smooth put in $7, and I want to say thank you to Team Smooth for doing that. I saw another donation earlier on from Kelsey Rank, who said, love both your work and excited to see you more on Badlands. Thank you, Kelsey. Appreciate that donation. Didn't notice anything more than that, but what you can also do is pick up Cynthia's book, The Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set, or become a paid subscriber to our Substacks, which also gives you access to all of the documentaries before other people see them. Paid subscribers get first access, also content that is behind the paywall. That means invitations to our weekly meetings, our weekly seminars that we do every Sunday, and many other things as well. So that's something I'll make available. All of those things I just said will be in the comment section in the video or below the video ASAP. Like as soon as this is over, I'll put all of these things, these links into the comment section. Just doing one last scan because we only have like 2 minutes left before I have to run. Cam, I'm so happy that you've been on today. Cam has been a longtime anti-fan of Albert Pike and has had first-hand experience with Albert Pike fan clubs or societies in a university in Missouri that he was engaged with, and was horrified to see what influence Albert Pike currently has on these fraternities.
Wow.
Yeah. So Cam has his own show on Badlands, and has even run the JFK speech, is what he said. So Cam, looking forward to us doing a show either on one of our platforms or your show, whatever. We should just, not waste any time and do that. So I guess that's pretty much it. We've run out of time. So I know Gordon's coming on, I think, next with his show. I'm not sure exact. Yeah, I think it's Gordon who's doing that. So without further ado, I want to thank everybody for all of their support. And next week, what we're going to do next week? The UFO. So next week, I'm sure everybody's noticed that the UFO disclosure psyop is getting loud. It's getting louder and louder in amplitude. And as we've pointed out, over many years of writing and of exposing this, that this is not what you are being led to believe. There are occult magic tricks at play that have a lot of expansive influence that have taken over control of Hollywood, most of the shows we watch, the books we read, the fictional books that are vetted to be in the major franchise bookstores dealing with our idea of sci-fi, what the future holds, what is AI, what are ETs, what is human being. A lot of the most nefarious warfare takes place in the realm of fiction. And so that is not detached from the amplitude that's being increased around the idea of the big reveal that they will be doing sooner than later around the notion that alien gods have been among us since the beginning of man, probably even seeded humankind, have been interfacing with governments, have been giving us technologies, and that there's probably good and bad aliens duking it out. And China, by the way, is run by the bad aliens. Big spoiler alert. So we've been doing a series of documentaries called The Hidden Hand Behind UFOs. The first one we're going to play next week with a conversation. This one was written by Cynthia Chung. It's going to blow your mind. It's lifting the esoteric. Yeah. Lifting the esoteric veil is the title. So tune in for that. We'll get all the technical glitches worked out. I promise. I do promise, but I don't guarantee that my promise will be fulfilled. But I'll try my best to work out all the glitches so there won't be any choppiness. And I look forward to seeing you with Cynthia next Monday at 6 p.m. Bye, everybody.
You're gonna be alright, just hold on for one night. It may take your whole life, but joy comes in the sunrise. Sunrise, just stay there, good things will come later. God made you for greater, hold on for that sunrise. To the lost and the broken, who don't know where their home is, don't forget where your hope is. I'm just helping you notice. You're gonna be alright, just hold on for one night. It may take your whole life, but joy comes in the sunrise. Sunrise, just stay there, good things will come later. God made you for greater, hold on for that sunrise. No, God didn't forget you, things that you've been through. He was there right beside you, helping to guide you and let some light through. I'm just here to remind you, you're gonna be alright, just